There we are.
Brilliant.
Awesome. So good evening, everyone. As usual, we're just going to take the next couple of minutes to share to any of our pages that we may have. So welcome. And can those of you who are listening, please confirm that we are audible and visible? As usual.
Whoops.
Oh, there's Harry from the past.
Sorry, that's me.
That's
I'm going to try and share this to my page, Harry.
Sure, yeah. We've
I'm not
got
sure.
time.
Oh, I'm not sure how to do that. Oh, yeah, sure. That'll be easy enough.
Oh, come on, don't freeze. Don't freeze. There we go. Let's try that again.
Okay.
Oh, there we are.
I'm just going to share it on my page and then I'll be able to concentrate on what we're doing here. That's all.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me know.
Yeah.
You ready? Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Naughty Autie in Conversation. This evening, I'm joined with Evaleen Whelton of AUsome Training. Hi, Evaleen.
Hi, Harry. Thanks for having me along.
My pleasure. So Evaleen has got a few slides that she wants to share with you all. And once the presentation has concluded, I've got a few questions I'd like to ask Evaleen. And then if we have time at the end, everyone is more than welcome to ask their own questions pertaining to today's topic. So Evaleen, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So I have a few slides.
I'm going to turn my video off.
Okay,
right?
Perfect. Okay, I hope everybody can see them. Okay, so just a little bit about me first. I am Evaleen Whelton. I've been autistic since 2014, which obviously isn't true, but I found out because I've always been autistic, but I only found out when I was 37 in 2014. Up until then, I was teaching speech and drama, and my first impulse after being diagnosed myself or finding out I was autistic was to create a class that used drama to teach social skills or communication, because I called it a communication class first. Then I kind of realized that no one knew what I was talking about, so social skills is what everyone was looking for. So, but it is really about communicating. I ran these classes in Cork, where I'm from, for the past 7 years. Last year, I wrote 3 kids activity books, so we put some of the activities that we do in the classes into the books so people can use them at home. I also do a Get Connected course, for parents, teachers, professionals. So I do it live once a month, or you can do it on our website, ausometraining.com, anytime through video tutorial, and you get to download another book which is full of lots of fun activities that you can do at home or school or in the clinic. So really, that's a lot of what I do, the social skills side of things, communication side, explaining the differences between autistic and non-autistic communication. I also set up Awesome Training. We have a new website now since November, but my page has been up and running a few years now. And I ran the first all autistic conference in Ireland 2 years ago in 2019. So it was the first time ever that we had a conference here about autism, where it was organized by autistic people, and all of our speakers, our presenters on the day, were autistic. So I'm very much about putting autistic people at the center of everything we do, because the autistic experience is kind of what's missing all of the time. Really, from a lot of the conversations around autism. So, if that's missing, well, then that's probably the most crucial point. So I'm sure myself and Harry will chat about this in a while. So, whoops, 1 second now. Okay. My slides are stuck. So that's just a picture of the books. That's a picture of the training. And we have a parents conference coming up next Sunday as well for parents who are new to autism, and that's on our website. So, when we're talking about social skills, what are we talking about? social skills is kind of this big, huge area. Some people think it's manners, some people think it's behavior, some people think it's the way you speak or interact with other people. For me, I break it into, I suppose how we, first of all, how we observe other people, how we read body language, how we use our voice to portray messages, how we, can join in with other people, make friends, work in teams, resolve conflict, all of that kind of stuff. Converse with people or communicate if people aren't communicating through speech, talking to people. But really, the more of this that I teach, the more I see the issues being for autistics in particular, being around the relationship we have with ourselves. Because if you're not confident in yourself, then it's really hard to communicate with other people. So that relationship we have with ourselves is actually, I think, something that we really need to focus on, and that other people in our lives need to focus on, because there's such pressure put on autistic people to kind of fit in and do all of these things. But really, it's, a lot of the time it's how we feel about ourselves that stop us from maybe interacting with other people, because we have a lot of negative experiences, unfortunately. So, to give an example, in my own life, I did, speech and drama since I was like a really young kid, like 4 or 5. So, I know how to use my voice. I know how to come across, to show tone in my voice. I know all of this stuff, and I'm really good at I was really good at doing that on stage. But in real life, even as an adult, there were just so many situations where I got completely overwhelmed emotionally, where I wouldn't have been able to say anything, never mind say it in a way that people would listen. There were other instances where, I might be in a group, say in a work situation, and I'd make a suggestion, and, like 2 minutes later, no one would pay much attention. And then 2 minutes later, somebody else would say the exact same thing, and everybody would be like, whoa, that's amazing, or whatever, and this person would get their reaction. And I'd be sitting there going, I just said that though. I just said the same thing. Why did I not, why did people not notice? And looking back now, it's really because I didn't have probably the confidence in myself back then that I do have now. And I probably dismissed myself, with the tone I was using or the way I said it. I didn't command people's attention. So there's a lot to social skills. It's not just how we interact with other people. It's very much about how we feel about ourselves as well. I think our relationship with ourselves is really, really a huge part of it. The other thing I wanted to bring up tonight was the way we look at social skills. Like we can't look at autistic social skills in isolation. Which is kind of, really obvious, because you can't judge how people interact on their own. You have to look at the social situation. You have to look at the social environment. You have to look at, well, how are other people interacting with this autistic child or autistic adult? How are their responses, changing that child's response or the adult response in the next instance, and what kind of feedback are they getting from their interactions? So up until now, and still, it's like, oh, autistic people lack the social skills. Autistic people need to be taught all this stuff. People looked at our communication in isolation, without looking at how other people are responding to us in the world. And a common example of this is when kids are saying, I'm autistic, that means I'm really good at some stuff, but I'm not good at making friends. You can't make friends on your own. You have to have somebody else with you. Likewise, you can't fit in unless you're left in. So this narrative that we have around autism, that all of the, deficits and all of the blame basically is on the autistic person, it's not right. It's not the correct narrative. We have to investigate, what's going on in the social world and what's going on in the social environment, because a lot of us have such high levels of anxiety and stress and depression, and social anxiety. That's quite obvious then, that our social environment isn't, it's quite hostile to us. So, what are social skills? Again, yeah, they're something that's interactive. Communication, by its very merits, is a two-way thing. You can't just say that one person is a poor communicator when you have the receiver. You have to look at what way the person is being received. But yet, all of this research and all these stories we have around autism are very much about the autistic person lacking all of these skills. This is what people say about us. Look, you can trawl the internet and you'll find loads of, descriptions of how we need to learn how to act in social situations. That we don't know how to engage with other people, but how good are other people at engaging with us? And I do want to mention, where's the empathy in these descriptions people have of us? And it's very much worth looking up. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Damien Milton's double empathy. But it very much comes into play when we're communicating, because sure, yeah, as an autistic person, I may have had difficulty, I may still have difficulty, picking up on non-autistic body language and non-autistic social cues and a non-autistic way of expressing. But likewise, non-autistic people are not very good at picking up on our cues. How good are, educators at picking up on an autistic child who's stressed? How good are they at reading our body language? How good are non-autistic people at knowing when we're listening, when an autistic person is listening? And, look, that's what the double empathy issue is. It's that actually you can really, as a human being, only understand your own experience. You can make a good guess what's kind of going on in the other person's mind, but we don't know what it's like. And if we only look at on the outside as well, we never kind of understand what's going on inside the person. And that's why the autistic perspective in all of this is so important, because it has been missing. Sorry, I keep going backwards. I do obviously need to mention the idea that autistic people lack social skills was never really tested. It was just kind of assumed, and all of these theories written about us, because it was an observer's viewpoint. It was somebody looking on the outside. And as I'm sure some of you are familiar, Dr. Crampton and Sue Fletcher-Watson researched this in Edinburgh, in 2019. And if you think about it, if autistic people, lack social skill, don't know how to interact effectively, don't know how to read other people, don't empathize with other people, all this kind of stuff. Well, if you put a bunch of us together, well then, we should not do very well at communicating without these very effective non-autistic communicators, helping us and guiding us. That would be the idea. That's what should happen if we really lack all of these skills. But when they tested this theory, they found the opposite, actually. They found that the autistic group, which is, see the green line down the bottom right, that's the autistic group. We actually did really well. We're really effective communicators when we're communicating with other autistic people. So it's not that we don't pick up on social cues and that we don't get things and that we don't understand this unwritten book of rules that's supposed to exist somewhere. It is very much that, but we do pick up on all of those things in an autistic situation. Just the same as non-autistic people can read each other's social cues and expressions and body language, but they can't read ours. They have difficulty reading ours. So it's the exact same thing. We could say that non-autistic people have deficits when it comes to communicating with autistic people, but we don't say that because there is more of them than there is of us. So this is pretty important research, and it kind of makes you wonder, why are we still defining autism with this deficit model? Why are we saying that autistic people have all of these skills or are lacking all of these skills? Why is that still a narrative? And I suppose there's just such, it's trying to get through, I suppose, get this information through to other people. That's where the hard part is. And if you look at the bottom bright graph again, the green line is the autistic group, so we did really well. The red group, our red line, is the non-autistic group, who did quite well, but the yellow line is where they mixed the groups. And that's the world we live in. That's where non-autistic people are communicating with autistic people and vice versa. And we, up until now, and still in a lot of places who haven't kind of moved with the neurodiversity paradigm, people think that autistic kids and adults need to be taught how to communicate, how to behave, how to respond to non-autistic, communication in a predictable way. These kind of ideas are out there, but communication is a two-way thing. So, if someone came in here, joined us that, had a different language, we wouldn't be saying, whoa, deficits in communication. We would be saying, well, obviously you have a different language and culture to us. So let's see what we can do to bridge this gap in communication. People start gesturing more and they start simplifying their language, and, they don't start using, they don't use sarcasm and colloquialisms. We simplify it because we try to communicate effectively with a person who we recognize as having their own language and culture. The problem is people don't recognize that about autistics, that we have our own language and culture, that we have our own way of communicating with other autistic people, and we don't need to be taught how to behave in social situations. And you can't make friends if nobody wants to make friends with you. And why aren't we looking at the social skills of the people around us? I have lots of, I've taught different kids over the years, and, I've heard horrible stories, of kids who are like 10 who've never been on a play date, despite asking friends over to the house, never been invited to birthday parties. Is that the child who lacks social skills? Or is it okay to treat somebody like that? So another question I suppose I like to bring up is why do non-autistic people think that their social skills are something that we need to be taught? Autistics have a lot of empathy. We have a lot of compassion when we're communicating with other people. I think we have a lot to teach other people about from our way of communicating. If you look at the world we live in and the mess that it's in, and the inequalities, are these the social skills that we need to teach other people? Or do we need to look at actually, how we communicate with each other and treat each other in this world? Because I think it's a big jump to say, this is how everyone should communicate, and that autistic people, need to be taught this. I'm going to just do probably one more slide. I'm conscious of time. So I just wanted to give an example. I use a green stop sign. And the reason I use a green stop sign is to explain to people who are not autistic what it can be like for us for communicating in a predominantly non-autistic world. So let's say you're driving, up the road, or you're walking along the footpath, and you come to the traffic lights and there's a green stop sign in front of you. So the word is saying stop, but the color is saying go. So you're getting two signals at once, totally conflicting with each other. What would you do? Like, how would you know whether to go or stop? And the answer is you wouldn't. You wouldn't really. You would just be that confused, unless you had a guide who came alongside and said, hang on, in this place, we actually read the color. We don't take any notice of the words. We read the color, so just go and ignore the words. You wouldn't know that. You would have to have someone explain that to you. And that's very much about my approach to social skills, is teaching autistic kids how to interpret these mixed messages that we get, from the world around us. Here's an example. And, again, it's the same as, Milton's double empathy. It's like, well, how do you know if you're getting all of these mixed messages? I'm actually going to skip to the body language one, because this is like a prime example of the miscommunications that happen. This is from one of the pages of the kids' books, the Connect books. When an autistic person is listening, so this is on body language. When we're listening, we might look away. I'm really visual, so I look away to translate what you're telling me into my internal language, into pictures or videos, then I'll translate it back into words so that I can respond to you. As a human being, I can't do all of that and look at you at the same time, because there's all of this, micro movements coming from your face, micro expressions, there's lots of information, so I can't do that. So I might look away, and that's me listening. That's me listening really attentively. Some other people might stim, they might stare. A lot of the time I look like I'm not listening because I'm into non-autistics, because I might be staring, but I'm taking everything in around me. Some people might pace up and down, whatever. We move about a lot. That's how we're taking in the information. Stimming is part of how we filter all of that out, and how we, that's again. So basically, an autistic person who's listening really, really hard looks like a non-autistic person who's not listening at all. And that's really, really confusing. And that's confusing for the non-autistic people around us. It's confusing for, teachers in the classrooms. It's confusing. And it's really confusing for us when someone accuses us of not listening, when we're like really taking in everything that they're saying. And a person who's not autistic and listening, will nod and reply and respond and look at the person, probably make eye contact, give friendly comments and compliments while you're talking, and probably not move about as much. And the more I teach these things, the more, that it seems to me that non-autistic people need more feedback in the social situation, that they need to know that they're being heard, they need to know that they're being listened, they need all of these messages like constantly during their communication. So it does seem like they need different or maybe more feedback during their social interactions. So this is just a prime example of how we're miscommunicating and how we can work through this, because we don't need to teach autistic kids how to, pretend this is how you look when you're listening, and you're doing this completely unnatural thing. And actually, if I have to try and look at you, I won't be able to hear you. I won't be able to do all the things I need to do to take in what you're saying. The opposite will happen. I'll spend all of my time just concentrating on looking, and, then I won't hear what you're saying. So, we have to understand the way autistic people communicate, and we have to understand the damage that we do if we, command them to behave in ways that aren't natural to them. So I will stop sharing and I'll leave it at that, because I could keep talking, but I know Harry wants to ask me some questions. Thanks for
that. Thanks for that really enlightening presentation. I think you may have answered a lot of the questions already.
Oh.
But we can have a look regardless. Well, the first one I ask traditionally to anyone I'm interviewing is usually personal. When did you discover you were autistic, and how did life change when you either self-identified or, were diagnosed?
Yeah, so for me, it was 7 years ago, 2014. My little girl was 1. So for me, I think, because people always go, how did you find out? Or, I'm like, why were you? I'm like, because of the 37 years that went before it. So I can't talk about all of those years, but I just, I think when I was pregnant, a lot of stuff from my past was coming up that I hadn't dealt with. Obviously now I know that's trauma. There was a lot of sensory, just like, obviously I'd been masking a lot in my life, and it just got harder and harder to mask. And now I know, looking back, that's what I was doing. I think I put myself under immense pressure then to, take on this character of the perfect mom. And, I couldn't just be a mom. Everything had to be perfect. It was just like, I used to iron her, like little baby grows, things that don't wrinkle. I used to iron, those little squares. I can't remember what they're called because she's 7 now, but, the little cloths that you have for when you're feeding them and stuff, I had to iron all of them. Everything had to be stacked. It was like, nobody was looking at what I was doing, but it was like a performance. It was like, I have to do all of these things because, I don't want anyone to see actually that I probably wasn't coping and that I was suffering. So, I suppose there was just a lot of stuff happening at the time. So when she was 1, I found out I was autistic, or I was diagnosed. I obviously, prefer to use identified language. So my life changed, I suppose it was like light bulbs just going, oh, that's why I have dimmer switches all over my my house. That's why, that's why I don't eat all these foods. That's why I had all these difficulties. That's why all these things happened. It was like literally just light bulbs, going off all over, and just everything just made sense, But then again, like any of us, I think, who go down the medical route first, you're kind of reading all this autism stuff or Asperger's stuff at the time. And, I genuinely believed it. I was like, I do have all of these difficulties, all those failed friendships, all those failed relationships. Wow, they were all my fault, And then, now I moved on a bit, and then I started meeting other autistic people and reading what autistic people were saying. And I was like, hang on, what they're saying about us isn't true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or at least it's a most incomplete explanation for why we are the way we are.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about this before. It's like the first point, or the point of entry into the world of autism, is the medical gates. We get diagnosed at a time, everything is going wrong, or we reach a new low that we have never reached before, right? And at that point, the medical model is thrown at us. And it's really, it would be much better if the diagnostic procedure was more slanted towards the social model, of course. And I suppose you've explained a bit about AUsome training. When did you set that up exactly?
Yeah, so it started as a Facebook page, and like that, it's been a journey for me, because it was like the first time I was me in the world, because I've masked since I was a young kid. So it was very much about me kind of finding, I think, a way to educate other people, but also share my experiences, figure stuff out as well. A lot of it was like, I think this might be, and other people kind of coming in on it. It was really wonderful, but and stressful at times. But so that's what it started as. It started as AUsome Cork, because it was like to educate people in my area. Now it's like we've got like a third of our audience in the States, so it's totally grown. So we changed, I had Confident Kids, which is my drama school, or my kids classes, and I was using that business, I suppose, and kind of we start, to run the conferences and all of that. But obviously COVID came along last year, so it just kicked us into gear. It just meant that, we set up our website, we kind of started doing this properly under AUsome Training, and that's, I suppose it's something we were going to do anyway, but it just meant that we went about it a little bit faster.
Awesome, exciting stuff. So now I came across your work not so long ago, actually. I have a group linked to this page for autistic parents, and a parent was asking if anyone knew of any, as parents do at the beginning of their journey, alternatives to ABA that are perhaps autistic-led. And someone mentioned AUsome training, and so that's how I stumbled across your work, and I just had to get in touch and ask you to come on, because what I find very interesting is you seem to me to be reclaiming the concept of social skills, because those are two words, when coexisting, are so steeped in stigma within the community. It's such a controversial concept within the autistic community, largely due to connotations of perhaps any neuronormative standard or ABA. So and the question was obviously, what do social skills mean to you? But you've explained that in the presentation, because that was very, very interesting, right? And clearly your work is about embracing the autistic way of being and doing things, and developing on rudimentary pre-existing autistic communication, like building on it. So we're not, at no point are we departing from the autistic way of being in your work, in your idea of social skills. We are looking at the stuff we already have, and like, no, we're gonna amplify the autistic experience. At no point do we dim it in favor of neurotypical social skills. Would that be fair fair characterization of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that, when I, first wrote the course, I was like, I must teach kids about their, about their feelings. And then I was like, these kids know all this stuff. I must teach kids. And they're like, they don't know all of this stuff. And I was like, maybe I know this stuff too. So, it has developed. And I think it's probably, this is the right time, because it really has developed into something quite different to probably, what it started out to be, which was teaching kids to maybe interpret non-autistic people, and using dramatic techniques and role play and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Never masking, but, now it's really turned into, a translation course, because it's literally like the kids books are like written so the parent or the adult using them can learn about our communication, while the kid is learning about their own way of communicating and, how other people communicate with them. It is about trying to make you feel, actually, you're okay as you are. Like,
sure. So it's important that we build on the natural foundation of autistic experience we already have. But do you think it's important to learn about neurotypical social skills anyway? Because this is quite important for us, right? I was explaining to someone not so long ago about a situation I was in a few years ago. Someone I knew returned with the last slice of cake, and they offered it to people in the room. And I jumped forward and said, yes, I want the last slice of cake. And a couple of people said, including the person with the cake, they said, no, I think you should leave that to the person who's already got the cake. And the person who had the cake said, yeah, you should really leave it to me. That's more polite. And I was like, what am I missing here? There is clearly a kind of plane of existence that you are inhabiting that I cannot access. I cannot possibly access this mode of communication. We're all speaking English, but I have missed something fundamentally. So in those situations, I think, look, to hell with neurotypical social skills, but sometimes it would be nice to understand what the hell is going on over there, right? And I suppose I was really pleased to hear you talking about Damien Milton's double empathy problem, because neither side are broken. We just have different communication styles, and we're speaking a different neuro language a lot of the time. We experience the lack of neurotypical empathy when you're going to your GP to inquire about your child, or when you're dealing with CAMS or whatever else. You really, really, really see it. Or when you're dealing with perhaps ignorant passing comments from family and friends, or if they were my child, I'd discipline them more firmly, etc. So it's probably important for us to learn a little bit about the neurotypical world.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing is communication is a two-way thing. There's a duality there. So, if you're speaking French and I'm speaking English, well, then we can both keep talking, but who's going to understand each other? It's like, I have to learn a little bit of French and you have to learn a little bit of English so that we can find a common ground. And I always find that there is a line between teaching someone to communicate in a way that I suppose it's teaching. Sometimes it's about teaching people to manipulate language a bit. We don't tend to do that. Because I think we speak quite directly. I use the example of, like, if an autistic person wants a chair, we'll probably say, like, can I have the chair? A non-autistic person might be like, oh, that's a lovely chair. Or is there someone sitting there? And then the autistic's like, no. We don't tend to naturally. I mean, obviously, look, of course I use colloquialisms, I use all these things because that's the world I've grown up in, and I have adapted my language. But I think, it is about, I think, first of all, yes, teaching autistic kids or teens or adults how to interpret others is really, really important. Harry, I'm sure, it's like, as a kid, I didn't know if somebody was like, if they were my friend, I didn't realize they were maybe, not being a friend, or I was being bullied, and people were saying awful things to me, and, didn't think they were because they were my friend, and friends don't do that. And why would a friend lie to you? And, one of the we do a lot of stuff around friendship as well for kids. And it's like, well, the most important thing about a friend, well, first of all, you decide what a friend is. Harry, you could be way more high maintenance than I am. It's like, it's not my choice what a friend is for you, and there's all this stuff about teaching autistic kids how to be a good friend and what a friend is. And I'm like, that's up to a person to decide. But it's important that they know that a friend makes them feel good. Because if somebody had actually said that to me as a kid, I'd have been like, oh, okay, so I should, you should feel good around this person. You should walk away, they're the person that you go to if you have a problem. They're the person that supports you. That's what a friend is.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us nicely on to the next question. Can we talk a little bit about autistic communication and how it differs to non-autistic communication? A lovely example that I've become familiar with is now we are kind of living in a virtual world, and we have to have a lot of Zoom meetings, for example. I notice how the word participate has the word participate and the word rude have a totally different meaning, whether you're in an autistic space or a non-autistic space. So the word participate in a neurotypical Zoom session, for example, would be to encourage everyone to make a verbal contribution, right? Okay. So if you have your mic off and your camera off, maybe the next week you'd be encouraged to turn your camera on. And then the week after that, turn your mic on. And the week after that, actually use your voice. Whereas in autistic spaces, it's like, you can keep your mic off, you can keep your camera off, you cannot say a single word. You are participating on the basis that you are present in the space, right? And then I noticed that when you actually meet up with autistic people in real life, some people are right in the heart of the group speaking. Other people are on the periphery spectating. Other people aren't even in the circle. They're at the other side of the room with their head, with their eyes glued to the laptop screen or the book they're reading, and they're still a part of the group. But in neurotypical spaces, there's more pressure to participate in a very specific way, even if that means you have to depart from what you find natural and natural to you. So little things like that. And the word rude, obviously, the word rude in the neurotypical world means that you fail to comply to a social norm, whereas we're like, well, fuck that, who cares about that? You're rude if you intentionally harm someone, right? And then I say the word rude and polite don't have very much meaning to me, because if someone just starts insulting me, I don't see it as rude. I see it as, well, you're being a bit of a dick and a bit abusive as far as I'm concerned. But can you see what I'm saying? Words have different meanings. So can we talk about the those differences?
Sure. I think, even the way when you were describing about that it's like step one, you were there. Step two, you might turn on your video. Next week, it's like exactly what we do to autistic kids. Oh, you said a word. Now, hopefully we'll build on that. And you would say, and it's like, the non-autistic view of what communication is always the goal, speech being the goal for everybody. It's the same as the Zoom you just described. I think, you said something that you said there really kind of, something that comes up a lot for me with parents. They're, how do I engage my child? How do I, get them to, and I'm like, but what are they doing with you? Because for me as a teen, I have just memories of my dad driving me to school and us not talking, just being in the car together. I don't know, the radio was probably on. It was probably some of my happiest moments.
I was going to say, it sounds lovely.
Yeah. Sounds lovely. I like talking, but also it's just nice just to have that time. For me, sharing space is communication. And, people have this idea that communication is all these things, but look at the world because of COVID. We're not sharing space with people, physical space with people anymore. We're communicating online, but why are we all still missing the sharing of space? Is the sharing of space actually more important than what we're talking about today, Harry? You know what I mean? It's like we seem to, I think autistics have that, people will call it sensory, but that's our connection with the world. I think we're very much conscious of everything that's happening around us, and that shared, social space or whatever you want to call it. Because there is all of this stuff about how do I engage my child? As a parent, I spent so much time just watching my little girl play. You know, I'm going, maybe this is weird. You know, like, why are all these parents wanting to join in with their 2-year-olds? I'm like, I just loved watching her enjoying herself.
Sure.
You know, yeah, it just seems such a natural thing to me. But, you know, I'm thinking now, because I'm, you know, there's a lot of stuff around play. I've written a few things about it recently, but it's, you know, it's like, well, that's a natural thing for me to do, is just to watch her enjoying herself. And I get enjoyment from that. I don't need to be down there in, you know, obviously, you know, interrupting her play. Like,
yeah. So the word play is interesting as well. Immediately, I'm analysing the word play and what that means, right? So we think about children playing. We might think about them playing tag or hide and seek, or, you know, they're doing some kind of role play thing. And now I've got an image of perhaps an autistic child just stroking the carpet.
yeah.
And they're perfectly content, right? And why stop them? If that is a meaningful experience to them, like running around outside playing tag is a meaningful experience to a non-autistic child, who cares? But we don't think about that. We don't think about the inner experience, do we?
I had a really good example of this. I did a session with Jude Morrow. I don't know if you know Jude. Jude wrote the book "Why Does Daddy Always Look So Sad?" But you know, in his book, he talks about like lining up cars, which is like obviously one of these big red flags. Oh my God, something to worry about if your child is doing stuff. But we were doing a training session, and it came up, and I asked you to, you know, I was like, how did it feel when you were doing this, you know, when you were playing with your cards? And he was like, oh, I used to run down every morning, you know, I just was so excited. I loved, it was like the highlight of my day. And he was like, I used to line them all up on the windowsill. And then he was saying, you know, I used to like have all the doors had to be closed exactly, everything had to be exactly right. And he was like, I used to watch Top Gear on the telly at the time. So I used to imagine I had a garage, and I was like having all my models in the garage. And, you know, I was like, Jude, this is like just what childhood play is, you know. And it's like, he was like, exactly, this is like what, you know, you're learning from your social environment, you're copying, you're doing different things. What people would look at from the outside perspective, you know, and, you know, it's like, this is inappropriate, it lacks imagination. But actually he was using his imagination. He was, you know, building his garage. Basically, he was doing all of the things that people talk about when they talk about children playing. But just because it's an autistic child doing it, it's wrong. And like, look at all the stuff, like look at all the games that kids use that line things up, and blocks, building blocks. It's like, but loads of kids line stuff up. It's actually like things that it's part of what we teach kids to do. A lot of their toys are actually about, you know, putting things in. And it's like, but autistic kids just kind of teach ourselves. I think that's it. We're teaching ourselves these things from probably earlier on, and people don't actually understand that's what we're doing.
I know, and my theory is that's why we reject so many forms of teaching, because we've got it covered. We have our own inbuilt faculty, our own self-directed learning method we begin to build on so early on. And the idea that someone comes along believing that their second-rate approach to learning is superior to ours is an insult. It's like, dude, I've got this covered, seriously.
Yeah. And why are they teaching me this when it makes no sense? And I don't know this bit first. It's like, yeah, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So where are we here?
Oh, there's loads of comments. Fair play, Harry. How are you able to keep track? I can't see any of them.
Yeah, I know. I think I've lost track a while ago, but I'll come back to them in a bit. Where are we? So what are the biggest or most harmful myths you find yourself debunking when it comes to autistic social skills? And I don't mean teaching neurotypical social skills to autistic individuals.
I think us lacking empathy is the most harmful myth that has been put out there about us. Because I think if you take empathy and emotions away from a human being, you're totally dehumanizing them. You're giving people permission to experiment on us. Doesn't really matter. They don't have any empathy. They don't really feel stuff anyway. Might as well just try. Any therapy is better than none. You know, there's all of this kind of narrative going on, because if you take feelings, I mean, that's what we say. We're different to, you know, other living things because we have feelings, which is debatable. But you know, I'm sure other living things have feelings too. But you know, that's what they've done. They've literally taken away our humanity, or you know, what people presume is humanity, and given permission to just, say what they want about us, basically, and do what they want to us. I think it's the most harmful part of the narrative that's out there about us.
Sure. Thank you. For members of the audience that don't know, what is the difference between autism training and autistic-led training?
Ooh. Yeah, autism training starts like this. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition.
Trigger warning, trigger warning.
It starts with a list of deficits and then how you can help your child get over those deficits. Autistic-led training is like, okay, all those deficits are nonsense. No one asked us. They just said all of this stuff about us. If we're going to teach you what it's like for us, how we experience life, we're also going to teach you what doesn't work for us. We're going to teach you what does work for us, and where we need to go. So that's it, really. Autistic-led training has autistic people involved in it. And for us, it's very much center. Like at the moment, all of our training is delivered by autistics only, because I think autistic people, there's enough of us working in all different roles. Why can't we just talk about, we have psychologists, we have teachers, we've got lots of people who have professional roles, have lots of research, as well as being advocates and all this. We can talk for ourselves, we can speak for ourselves, there's a huge difference. And autistic-led training, explains the why. I find that's when someone comes to our training, they're like, oh, you're so logical. I'm like, yeah, because it makes sense. I can explain to you why somebody rocks. I can explain to you why somebody flaps. I can explain to you, well, that's trauma. That's a human being who's traumatized. That's because autism training also, like the diagnosis, is just a mishmash of stuff. Like half of that's not being autistic. That's being a traumatized autistic, as well. Meltdowns and shutdowns and all of these things should not be happening to autistic people. Like the fact that this is kind of accepted as a part
right,
of
that's really interesting. I never thought about it like that, because some training courses even, have the name, how to manage meltdowns and, challenging behaviors, which assumes that those kinds of things now are going to happen, and they will happen because we're obviously just autistics trying to get by in a non-autistic world. But yeah, you're right, it's spoken about as though they are just a fact of autistic life, and they don't have to be.
No,
they don't have to be when we move into our autistic natural habitat.
And it's also the same with social anxiety. It's like, I can't leave my house because I'm autistic. I'm like, no, you can't leave your house because you have social anxiety because of the way you've been treated all of your life. It's again, we think, even as autistics, we think that a lot of the stuff that's, is autism or being autistic, a lot of our mental health, it doesn't have to go. We don't have to have these rates of anxiety. It's like, why are we anxious? So I focus on the environment, and, obviously people do need short-term measures if you are dealing with someone who's highly stressed. But the long game is, to actually bring down these levels of stress, make the world less hostile to us, and actually, like, when I even thought about this more, I was like, well, even the presumption that autism even exists is like, why don't people question that? I actually even wrote an article on that a few weeks back. I was like, if you're looking for autism training, you've already decided that autism is a condition. It's like, why?
Yes. I said that not so long ago on my page, to kind of poke a little fun at person first language and say, where is autism? Like, seriously, who's got autism? Return it to me at once, as though it is this separate entity that we kind of carry around with us. So yeah, there's only autistic people,
Yeah, well, I think as well, Harry, like if you change where people use autism and you put in autistic people, those lovely books that are written about us, like End Autism Now. Well, if you would change autism to End Autistics Now, I think people then get an insight into like what it's like for us reading these books or seeing these titles, and the people just saying these things as if like we, not you're too high functioning or whatever. It's like, but you're talking about autistic people. When you use the word autism,
right,
you're talking about us.
They don't pick up on the genocidal and eugenic connotations in the same way we don't pick up on these bullshit social norms.
Yeah. Well, maybe
I'm starting to get an idea of which one's the disorder. So, why do you believe that so many schools and organizations still use non-autistic-led training to educate their staff? And do you think we'll ever get to a place where we tip the balance and the majority, if not all, autism training is autistic-led?
I would like to think that that's how it should go. I mean, no, I mean, I think I would like to actually think that that's where we need to sit for a while, where autistics are fully involved in it, but that we move on. There's some brilliant allies. There are fantastic professionals who are working, you know, with the autistic community, who are listening to what autistic people are saying, who are moving away from social skills training and ABA and all of these awful things, and actually looking for ways that, you know, are genuinely helpful to us. So, you know, it's not the end goal that autistic people are the only ones ever talking about autism, but I think we do need, it has to be centered right now because of the place we're in, the change, you know what I mean? That phase that we're in right now as a community, because we have been just like ignored for almost a century, like just left out of any conversation about us. Like this is new. Like even in the past 7 years, I've seen such a change, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, people are, you know, it's not like news when I'm telling people like, oh, ABA isn't like, you know, approved by the autistic community. It's like, people have kind of heard these things now. People have heard of the word neurodiversity. There's definitely more awareness. We need obviously to go much further, but, you know, there definitely is, I think, a lot, we're in that period of change. I think it's kind of getting faster over the past maybe year or so. It's definitely, there's just seemed to be, I think the autistic community is just growing in confidence.
Yes, that's a good point. We're learning to stand on our own 2 feet, you know, forgive the cliche, but that's it. What was I going to say? I think at this point in our history, if a non-autistic person is delivering autism training, they should be accompanied by an autistic person. I think at this point, you need direct insight into the personal experience. And if not, I think the training's a waste of time.
It is a waste of time, but this is the thing. It is a waste of time because it is just a bunch of words that are meaningless to the actually autistic person. It's, you know what I mean? It is actually a waste of time because it's just made up stuff. It's not.
Well, it's a guessing game, isn't it? It's a guessing game.
But it's you know, it's like, oh, autistic, they move, they do this weird stimmy thing. You're like, yeah, all human beings do. Like all human beings stim. All human beings, you know, like it's like, it's again, if you think of autistics as human, and that's very much, that's our starting point. You know, and any of our training is like, well, yeah, you know, someone goes, why does my child do this? Well, why would a human child do that? And then the person has the answer. Well, an autistic child is a human child, so they're going to do it for the same reason. Yeah. It's, you know, it's really not that complicated. And when I find people have the answers, because you know what, we're all human, and they can empathize with autistic humans because we're all human. So we all experience similar things. It's not like we're over here in this weird group of people where everything's sensory, whatever that's supposed to mean, you know?
That's it. Because once we do kind of neurotranslate, like a lot of autistic people might say something like, oh, sometimes it's very difficult to put myself in someone else's shoes. But once I know, oh my goodness, once I understand that my neurotypical friend, partner, or family member is sad, I can't deal with it. You know, their sadness immediately becomes my sadness. So
yeah,
it's not a lack of empathy so much as it is in just this cross neurological translation issue.
I think there's a lot involved with it. I mean, like, even, you know, I can think of times in my own life where, you know, I did lack empathy, but yeah, because I was dealing with so much of my own anxiety and depression. You can't actually empathize with other people when...
Okay. At that point, I'd say that was more to do with trauma as opposed to pure autistic experience in a vacuum. Because when we are hypervigilant, it means that we kind of feel that death is lurking around the corner, and we have to be more selfish in order to protect ourselves and keep ourselves alive.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. So that's again, that's any human being who's recovering from trauma or experiencing trauma. So sometimes we don't have that ability. Other times, Harry, you know what? I'm worried about kids being abused. I'm worried about ABA. So maybe I can't empathize the fact that you got your hat in the wrong color, because you know what? It's probably not the most important thing. But I think again, it's people don't understand our empathy. Like I can just pick up how people are feeling. And that's another level, you know, that green stop sign. It's like, yeah, well, they're giving you these messages, but actually you can feel how they're feeling, you know, and that's just another element. It's like, what, but I know I'm not wanted here, but they're saying stay. And it's, you know, again, another element, but yeah, I mean, the whole empathy thing is ridiculous, and how we empathize is misunderstood. That's something
how we empathize, because there's this kind of prescriptive view of what empathizing means. Like, I have beautiful conversations with other autistic people revolving around animism, right? So people who have teddies say, seriously, I cannot deal with the duvet being over the teddy's face. I don't want the teddy to suffocate. Or even, I don't like using the same plate over and over again because I feel that the other plates will be missing out on the experience. Or if I sleep with, I have 2 pillows on either side, but only sleep with 1 pillow on either side at night. I can't leave the pillow on the floor face down in case it suffocates.
It would be lonely. It would be lonely then.
You've got to put the pillows together, right? And using socks, you know, no, I've used those socks, put them at the back, you know, so everyone gets a turn. Like, seriously, neurotypicals, you have no idea how rich our empathy world is. It's not just afforded to our fellow autistics. It's afforded to everything we own and things that other people own. Yeah. And really, if anything, we lack empathy towards NTs, whilst everything else in the universe gets empathized with.
Yeah, well, I think we have enough empathy for NTs too. I do, and I think the way we try, because
I need them. They're fundamental. They're central to my comedy routine.
Stop. If we're looking for equality, Harry, we gotta have respect for all neurotypes.
I'll try my hardest. No
try,
guarantee.
Come on, try. But if I'm empathizing with someone, this is the thing that comes up often. So it's like, again, it's a total miscommunication, because, you know, let's say someone's telling me a story. A few things can happen. I can start to tear up if it's a sad story. I can start to cry. When I obviously control that more probably now, but you know, if I was younger, that looked like, oh, there's Evaleen trying to take over the conversation. Oh, it's not about her. I'm literally feeling that person's pain. If someone cries in front of me, I will cry. Also, I might try and empathize with somebody by saying, oh, that's like the time when and I'll bring it back to the exact situation in my life, because I'm trying to figure out exactly how that person's feeling. That's how much we empathize. We don't just say, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, and that's how, you know, we actually do try to feel your feelings, and which probably is the real definition of empathy. But again, if you don't understand that's what I'm doing, it could be like, oh, Evaleen's trying to make it all about her again. You know, why she bring the story back to her? That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to feel what you're feeling. That's my way of empathy. So important,
because that is an example of hyper empathy. It's saying, look, I get it. I have a similar experience that I understand at a personal level, like you understand this. I'm bridging the gap here. I'm not turning it around in any way whatsoever. It's like, yes, we kind of almost share this on an experiential level. So that's very important. So coming up to the end of our time here, I suppose the last question I have written down is, how do we, as the neurodivergent community, work together with neurotypicals to bridge the gap in communication and understanding?
There's this wonderful course. It's an awesome training that teaches exactly that. I think it is about empathizing with each other. I think it's trying to find ways, and I have a framework that actually works through, you know, it puts people in our shoes, and it explains to people what it's like to be autistic in a non-autistic world, and people get it. And you know, it's I think that empathizing with each other is the biggest starting point, you know, and it's, you know, I think respecting that autistic people have our own way of communicating, and that it's valid and there's nothing wrong with it. It needs to be respected. I think, yeah, empathizing with us, respecting us, you know, and accepting is such a big part of it. You know, I mean, they're just really simple concepts, I know, but there's so many blocks to getting there. Yeah, I think that they're probably the main issues, really.
Awesome, thank you.
Eveleen's laugh is making me happy. Yay.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. Me too.
Is my inappropriate laughing upsetting anybody?
Right, awesome. So let me just check to see if anyone has maybe any questions, but I think it was quite informative for people, and people seem to be really enjoying the exchange. But
I could just laugh for like a minute because people are.
I think, you know, like on YouTube, you can have like desert sounds for 10 hours or the sounds of the Mediterranean. I think we need 10 hours of your laughter for people to do like an Evaleen meditation. So for those of you who are present, we have some links. I seem to have lost Charlotte, but that's okay. I'm going to very quickly reshare some of these links for you. So we have, oh goodness me, let me do this quickly. The AUsome training website. Oh no, it's all. I mean, yeah, in the description you can find a lot of links to Evaleen's pages and website, etc.
Cool. I'll just pop the website in there now as well.
Oh, thanks. That help. That really helps. Oh, here's Charlotte. Yeah, so Charlotte, if you can just share some of those links, that'd be great. But yeah, Evaleen, thank you. That was a really enjoyable conversation.
It was good fun. And look, we were able just to communicate, Harry. I've never spoken to you before.
I know, right? We've never spoken before. You throw us together. When it comes to autistic interaction, we care about the content. The conversation is a byproduct of established shared interests. You know, we're talking about autistic experience, and you can't shut us up.
Exactly.
And we're laughing away. You know, where's the lack of empathy and where's the lack of social skills? You know, awesome. Right, I'm going to stop live streaming now. So thanks Evaleen, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Awesome.
Thanks, Harry.
My pleasure.